Thanks for listening to the Film Florida podcast. If you have a minute, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Thanks, and we appreciate your support. Welcome to the Film Florida podcast. My name is John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Today, our guest is Chad Crawford. Chad is the Emmy Award-winning owner and creative director of the Crawford Group, as well as the host of the television series How to Do Florida. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today, Chad.
Well, thanks for having me, John.
I like to start each of these interviews with a bit of a backstory. So how did you get your start in the industry?
Well, I graduated Full Sail in '95 and got out of Full Sail. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Didn't have anybody, no friends or family in the business. So I was really kind of starting from zero. Worked on some feature films locally and really just started a production company doing a wide range of mainly corporate video and got fairly successful with that. Built the company up to one point almost 15 employees. And in this area, that's a pretty good sized production company. But really it felt like I was wanting something different, wanted some ownership of what I was doing. That kind of led me into really wanting to change my company's focus.
So now I know you do a certain amount of original programming, which I want to talk about, but you still do some work for hire. So talk about that balance in operating the company.
Yeah, it's tough. I think, a true entertainment company, at least in my mind and my definition of it at the time, was a very scaled down company. It was an office with a phone in it that really was connecting the dots, trying to create and make a film or a television series happen, and not really being invested in production gear and staff. That's what we did. We really scaled down in this effort of trying to transform my company from a corporate video company to a entertainment company. And my personality, I tend to do things in extremes, so I kind of went the extreme with it. But now, the more we're into it, I think we're kind of swinging the pendulum back a little bit and are doing more corporate video just because it feels like a nice complement to the sponsors I'm already working with, where I'm creating branded content for them. Well, in the midst of that, they need commercials, they need social media work, so we're able to kind of fill that void for our clients as well.
So some of your best clients are those that are also helping you on the original programming side.
Absolutely. So, we enter into these partnerships with these sponsors, creating content with them. So we get to know them well. We get to know what their marketing needs are, what they're trying to do, whether they're marketing a destination, a product, or a brand. And so we just kind of get folded into a lot of their production efforts and end up doing quite a bit of production work for them.
So in looking at your original programming, a lot of it focuses on being outdoors in Florida. I'm assuming that's both a passion of yours as well as a product of being based here in Florida. Why has that combination worked for you?
Well, I got some good advice a long time ago when I first started this. Somebody said to me, if you're going to do this, you're going to go out on a limb and start this, make sure it's something you're incredibly passionate about. And I kind of looked around me and was starting to have a young family and seeing a lot of families around me struggle with getting their kids outside and really seeing a disconnect from the natural world from a younger generation. And so I knew I had a passion to speak to that, and I also had an incredible passion for the outdoors. And my backyard was Florida, and I don't think I realized it then how just much I was in love with this state and how much I felt like this state needed somebody to showcase it. And I felt like we had a lot of people who their head was here, but their heart wasn't here because they were from someplace else. And I wanted to create more advocates for our state. So I just kind of put all my chips on Florida. So far, it's working.
So I don't want to ask which show of yours is your favorite, because it's kind of like asking which one of your kids is your favorite. But the Emmy Award winning How to Do Florida probably is your largest success. For those that aren't familiar with that series, what is it?
Well, we're going into our 10th season, which is pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Over 100 episodes. And really, what the show is in the title. It shows people how to do Florida. And because there's so much to do in Florida, I think a lot of people come here and they just don't know what they don't know. And so they go to the beach, they go to the mall, they've been to Disney, and they're kind of like, what else you got? And there's so much to do. So it really is, to answer your question, John, it really is a family outdoor travel show is what I call it.
Okay.
I bring my kids and my wife along quite a bit on the episodes. And the show's a little quirky because I think Florida's a little quirky. The show's a little off. I try to embody the spirit of Florida, which can be a little wonky and a little tacky and a little quirky. And I think that's okay. I think that's who Florida is. But Florida's also has some of the most incredible natural treasures in the world. That's really what the show is about, getting people the encouragement, the tools to get out and see it for themselves.
And you're the host. I mean, did you ever imagine, you said you graduated from Full Sail.
I mean, me of that, John. I am the host.
Do you like being the host?
Well, I tell you what, it was out of necessity at the beginning. It was not the intent for me to be the host. I'm a director producer, so my intent was to cast a host. And we had a big casting call, brought in 40 hosts. End of like a 3-day casting session, I was beat. Anybody who's done a lot of casting knows that nothing wears you out like just casting. Mm-hmm. And I came home and I was like, honey, I can't find anybody to do this. Like nobody's like jumping out. And my wife said, you need to do this. And I was like, honey, no. I'm the producer. I'm the director. I'm not the host, And she's like, look, this is your passion. This is your heart. You need to do this. And then she's also like, look at how much money we could save. And I was like, okay, well, now you got a good point. So it was really kind of out of necessity. And we did our first episode in New Smyrna Beach. And I'll never forget driving there. My director, DP, looked at me and he's like, do you know how to be a host? And I said, I've directed hosts. I think I can do it. He's like, people do this is like what people do for a career. Are you sure you can do this? And I was like, I don't know. Let's see. And so that was, over 100 episodes. They haven't fired me yet, so I'm going to keep going.
Well, and the one thing, I've seen a lot of the episodes and a lot of the segments, and the one thing that is true is that you have to be authentic and you have to be real if you're going to do that show. And that's why you can clearly connect the passion that you have for Florida and the content with you being the host. And if you don't find that right combination, then the show doesn't work.
Well, I always felt my role as the host was to address what people were thinking in that moment. So if you're not from here, you don't know that how to kayak, or you don't know how to do some of the things that I grew up with. I never wanted to come across as the expert and the know-it-all. I wanted people, when they finish watching my show, to say, if that idiot can do it, anybody can do it. But, honey, let's go get some kayaks. So I always hook up with an expert who brings the knowledge and the wisdom. My goal is to kind of stumble through it and make people feel comfortable about doing this.
And where can people find How to Do Florida?
Well, our season starts in June, and it airs on primarily ABC affiliates throughout the state. We also air our shows on Fox Sports Sun. You can find some shows on YouTube, past seasons. We're launching a new digital channel starting at the end of March called Discover Florida, and that'll be across all platforms and devices, and you'll be able to watch all of our content there.
Now, one of your new series is called The Outsiders Club, which is also an Emmy Award winner. Talk about that series.
Well, this is a real passion of mine. I really feel like we're raising the next generation of our environmental caretakers inside. And as a parent of 4 kids, I saw firsthand how hard it was to get kids outside. There's a tremendous amount of fear out there as a parent to let your kids outside. And when I say let your kids outside, I'm not talking about the front yard, but I mean roam. Let your kids go down to the creek and go out in the woods and walk and wander blocks and blocks away like we did as kids. There's a real reluctancy for parents to let their kids do that today. And our children are missing out on a lot of great childhood experiences, especially when it comes to being independent, being creative, being innovative, working out their own issues, dealing with bullies. We're stripping our kids away from a lot of those experiences, valuable life experiences. I really wanted to create a show that showed parents, like, this is what this looks like, and this is good. Letting your kids roll around the dirt and letting your kids, go outside and be by themselves and deal with being bored. This is good. So, yeah, that series was born, and we're going into our 4th season. Our main partner is Florida State Parks, who we're incredibly proud of to have on board. They've been an incredible partner for us, primarily because we film in almost exclusively all their state parks. We have Department of Citrus. We have Florida Milk, a lot of really great Florida organizations that are invested in children, primarily here in Florida, on board as sponsors. And it's just a fun show. It's just designed to get kids excited about going outside, giving them some ideas. During our 1st season, my son Chase, who was one of the hosts, he leaned over to me and he said, "You realize the irony here? You're creating a TV show to try to get kids to go outside." And I said,
That's true.
I realize that, but this is all I know how to do. I'm a TV producer. Like, I don't know what else to do. So this is what it is.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
What are some of the other projects or series that you're most proud of?
I think one that comes to mind is Saltwater Cowboys, which was a 1-hour documentary we did with the Department of Agriculture, and we followed 4 commercial fishermen throughout Florida. I just love that because it was just so gritty, and there's nothing more honest and true than commercial fishermen. And to get a glimpse into their life and to be able to showcase that to the viewing audience was just it was really an honor and a privilege. And I look back on that now, and I'm just like, oh, man, the older you get and you look back on things you did, they have this nostalgic value. The more I watch that piece, the more I kind of fall in love with it and want to do more pieces like that.
And how do you come up with some of the concepts? I mean, when you look at your website, you see all kinds of original programming. What's the creative process?
Well, our niche is really branded content. So I essentially go out and identify content at the very start and say, man, it would be great to do a special or a series about this. And then from there, I go try to find invested interest in that topic, and I try to find sponsors. Understand, we're not selling our content to Discovery or Travel Channel. We're not only producing the content, but we're finding the sponsors for the content, which can be very difficult. And now I'm dealing with the sponsors, so I have to, make sure that their interests are represented and that they trust me with their brand and their message to make a piece that feels very authentic, but also has their messaging or their interest in there. And that could be a tough line to walk as a producer. There's this term called pay to play, and that's essentially, what we're talking about here. But if it's done right, it can be done very effectively. And if you have the right sponsor and you have a good relationship with that sponsor, you can create great content that is both entertaining, informative, but also serves the brand's needs in terms of communicating who they are to an audience.
Chad, clearly you have figured out how to make Florida the topic of a lot of different projects. Talk about Florida overall as a destination for film and television production.
John, I love filming in Florida. I mean, it's my studio. It's my backdrop. I wish more producers around the country would see Florida how I see it. There's so many characters here. There's so much texture. There's so many great scenes and backdrops. I really feel like our state is underserved.
So how do we get there with bringing more producers here to see what you see?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, film incentives are a big part of attracting big productions. I think Florida has a good base of students and apprentices that are coming out of our state. We have very established film colleges that are producing students of film, but a lot of those students are going back home and starting their own production company or getting involved in production there. I don't know, John. That's a good question. I know you guys have been trying to crack that code for a long time. I think I see a lot of what's happening in the film industry is a little bit of a pendulum where, everybody's jumping on what's hot and what's new, and primarily that centers around film incentives. Right now it's Atlanta and Georgia. I mean, almost every film I watch has that peach at the very end of it, which, indicates that they have been given significant film incentives and support for making of that feature film or television show in Georgia. We had that at one point. It's gone now. My hopes is that we get that back, because that is, to me, at the very core of what attracts these filmmakers to Florida. Because a filmmaker can make anything out of anything, with backdrops and set dress. They can do a lot, with a location in terms of trying to get a variety of different looks and feels. And Florida has a lot of those looks and feels. I think we're just lacking some of the film incentive programs to really attract some of these bigger productions.
That'll do it for this episode of the Film Florida podcast. Thanks to Chad Crawford for joining us. And of course, thank you for listening. To learn more about Chad and his various endeavors, visit crawfordentertainment.tv. That's crawfordentertainment.tv. For more information about Film Florida, go to filmflorida.org or visit our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And of course, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.